Okay, so today we are going to make rock textures. We are going to make two different types of rock textures, and we are also going to do the particle sim on this hill, as well as showing how to make the cracks on this floor. This video will be sorted into chapters, so if you want certain chapters, you could just go into the description and choose which one you'd like to follow. Before we begin, I want to send a big thanks to everyone on the Patreon, especially the ones on the Golden and Diamond Spoon tier lists. Alright, let's begin. Okay, before we learn how to texture a rock, we need to know how to make a rock. There's an easier way to do this in Blender. We have in the mesh options a rock generator. But the way to enable this is to go to the Preferences tab and search for extra meshes. And then you can click this box over here, and in the mesh selection tab, the rock generator will be available. Okay, so once you have the rock you'd like, you can go into the modifiers tab and find which modifier is not needed, because normally when you edit these rocks, it adds a whole lot of modifiers, and sometimes it would bog down your PC. So I would recommend choosing the modifiers that are least valuable to your mesh and deleting them. Okay. So now that we have our rock, we can start with the shader. So add a noise texture and Ctrl T it. Now we are just going to use the object option on the texture coordinates and scale down the noise texture. Now add a color ramp, and then we are going to crunch the white and black values a bit so that they are very distinguishable. Okay, then add a mix color, plug the color ramp into the factor of the mix color and change the colors. The A socket should be a dark color and the B socket should be light. Then afterwards add a hue and saturation value node and plug that into the base color of the BSDF. Oh, and here are the hex codes that I eventually settled on. My principal BSDF is set to full roughness and full metallic, and our hue and saturation node is set to value 4. Okay, so in front of our BSDF, bring in a shader to RGB so that we can plug it into a mix color, plug that into the A socket of the mix color, setting it to color dodge, then bring in a Fresnel node. This is so that we have some nice highlights around our mesh. And then bring in a color ramp in front of the Fresnel, and then crunch in the black and white sliders. You want to be able to see the white wherever you move the camera, but you do not want it to be all over the model. Okay, now bring in a shader to RGB, bring in an emission behind that, and plug that node 3 into the B socket of the mixed color. And now the reason why we brought in the emission is so that we can control the brightness of our highlights. Okay. All we have to do now is edit the highlight just a little bit by bringing in a noise texture and a color ramp, crunching the colors on the color ramp so that the black is kind of visible, because we want to be able to distort the highlights that we have here. We do not want it so uniform. We want it kind of distorted. And that's what this noise tree helps with. Oh, and if you have Goo Engine, you can, instead of using the Fresnel node, you can use the curvature node, and you could set it to either the scene curvature or scene rim, whichever one you desire, and use the same node tree that I set up here with Fresnel. Now we are going to make the particle system. I'm just going to select a new hair particle system, make the render a collection, and then choose the collection you intend to use. Then change the randomness scale and the scale of the rock, because you do not want it all to be the same size. You can change the render amount to around 300 because you don't want too much. I also enabled the advanced settings so that I can change the rotation, and I changed it to object Y. And I'm also going to randomize it a little bit and to change the phase and the random phase. Then I'm going to go down to the vertex groups and choose one of the vertex groups I used on this hill, because I just want the rocks to be on the top, not at the bottom of the mesh. Then I'm going to edit the seed of the particle system until I get something I like, and that is pretty much it for this hill of ours. And then obviously you can edit it as much as you want. Okay, now before we texture the floor, I'm going to show you how I made the cracks on the floor. So I'm going to hide the hill, bring in a cube and scale it down. So all you need to do is model a crack with this cube mesh. I'm just going to scale it down, move it on the Y and X axis, extrude it, move it again, extrude it, move it again. And then after this, I'm going to add a little bit more geometry onto this mesh because I'm going to displace it with a displacement modifier. Then you want to bring it down onto your floor and then press the floor, add a boolean modifier and then select this plane you just made. And for me, the boolean worked when I set it too fast. And there we go, we have our crack on the floor. You could obviously use this for many other meshes, but I decided to use it for the floor. Now that our cracks have been made, I'm going to copy this initial color node 3 I made for the normal rocks and paste it into our floor texture, because we are going to use this as our base color for the floor as well. And our BSDF for the floor is just a full roughness, there's no metallic. Okay, I'm just going to change some things for the floor. I'm going to change the scale, the detail, and the color a little bit. The detail because we want the floor to have a little bit more grit than the hill. And now, I'm going to add something very important. I'm going to bring in a mix color, set it to multiply, then bring in an ambient occlusion node. Similar to the previous wood texture tutorial, make sure that your render settings has ambient occlusion enabled. Okay, because we are going to use the ambient occlusion node. So plug that into a color ramp and then crunch the sliders a bit so that you can see the black a bit more and increase the distance value on the ambient occlusion node. After doing that, plug in this ambient occlusion 3 into the B socket of the mix color multiply and play around with the factor. And then, when we check the BSDF, we should have some nice contact shadows between the hill of stones and the floor. Now for the finishing touches of our floor, we are just going to add some bump. So bring in another noise texture, Ctrl T that noise texture, and make sure you select object on the texture coordinates, increase the scale and the detail of the texture, and then bring in a color ramp. We are going to make two white sliders with a black slider in between the two. And then in front of that we are going to bring a bump node. Make sure you plug that 3 into the height, not the normal. And I'm also going to lower the strength of this node because we do not want it too detailed. I'm going to set it to around 0.1. There we go. And those are anime stone textures. It's not perfect. If you guys want a more detailed stone texture like this stone I have over here, then I can make one in future. But this is it for our anime stone textures. It's simple, but I think it gets the job done. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and benefited a bunch. See you in the next one. Alright, bye.